Hello and welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I'm of course your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 247th episode, our returning guest is Jonathan Fowler. Jonathan Fowler is the most frequent guest of the podcast and has appeared on dozens of episodes. For a complete list, check the show notes. Jonathan graduated with a BA in History from Indiana University in 2006. He is an unabashed left-wing political junkie. He has lived and worked in South Korea for over a decade, trying to help the citizens of that great nation, hopefully, talk pretty one day. A quick editor's note. My children were quite loud at times in the background of this episode. I edited out as much of it as I could. Also, this conversation was recorded a few months back, but I felt like most of it still holds up. However, there have been a few developments between then and now. The candidates who were facing Donald Trump and Joe Biden in the primaries have since ended their runs. Joe Lieberman died. Joe Manchin declared he would not run for president in 2024. No Labels ended their presidential bid for 2024. Post News has shut down. Jonathan and I are both on Blue Sky now. However, I am still not on Threads. And now on to the show.
How's Korea today?
Doing okay. Yeah, it's chilly. It's a little cold, but not too cold. The temperature's gone up and down multiple times so far this winter.
Does it usually snow there at this time of year?
Off and on. We had snow for Christmas, but then I think it was practically raining or something for New Year's. So, yeah, lots going on in the world, I guess, these days.
Just a few things. Well, the last time we spoke, we were covering the first non-Trump 2024 GOP presidential debate, and since then, several of the candidates, such as they were, have ended their campaigns, unsurprisingly. I feel like we should do an in memoriam tribute. Like at the Oscars or whatever, for all the...
Yeah, well, Mike Pence is not there anymore. Chris Christie is not there anymore. The other guys, I don't know. I mean, did some of the other guys drop out? I imagine some of them must have.
Doug Burgum, December 4th, he said goodbye. Tim Scott.
Doug Burgum, we barely knew you.
I still don't know him very well. Tim Scott, November 12th, said goodbye. Mike Pence, of course, October 28th. Larry Elder, Perry Johnson, Will Hurd, Francis Suarez. Yeah, those are all gone. Looks like we've still got DeSantis, Haley, Hutchison, Ramaswamy, and of course Trump.
So yeah,
that's the field as it stands right now. But I think if we're being realistic here, only person on that list I can see actually making it any further would be Nikki Haley, because that does seem that people are, I don't know, coalescing around her, such as it is, to be the...
Yeah, but they always do this. They always coalesce around the great big hope, and then it doesn't pan out very quickly, right?
Yeah,
So,
I'm not saying it's going to work, but I'm not surprised that DeSantis is still in it. I'm surprised that he seemed to have lost steam pretty quickly once the rubber met the road or whatever, like as far as enthusiasm. So
yeah. This is. I'm trying to think about how many, because we did talk. We had some back and forth about whether to do more debates or not, and I don't know. My feeling is just that there's hardly any point. These people, they're not, having big ideas about the major issues of the day. They are, they're basically auditioning to be Trump's VP, or they're all secretly hoping that Trump is going to be arrested at some point, and then they're going to be the de facto Republican candidate, basically nominee. But it's just a bunch of like posturing on TV about who can be more conservative, who can say worse things about Joe Biden, who can not say bad things about Donald Trump as much as they can, and it's just not a serious thing, I would say, in a way.
Yeah, it's not an exercise that I particularly enjoyed, especially hearing all their terrible ideas over and over again. So I can't say I was sad to miss some of the later ones. I think there were some catty moments between them, but I mean, like you said, I don't know what it all amounts to in the end. So it's kind of just a distraction until
point we're just at a certain point we're just doing the race horse thing, the horse race coverage, basically, like, this person said a catty thing about that person. Ooh, what are they going to do? Well, nothing. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. I am glad we did the first one at least, so we had the entire field as it was then that we wouldn't have now. So and I don't know that anyone's really said anything that changes much of what we said initially anyway. So, but yeah, I'm sure they're just gonna nominate Trump in the end or whatever. So it's not much of a spoiler. So
I think if I were Trump and I wanted to have any kind of a mainstream vice president, I would wait until either Nikki Haley or whoever gets in a commanding second place lead over the other ones, and then I would publicly say to Nikki Haley or whoever, hey, if you drop out right now, I'll make you my vice president. If you wait a week, it's not on the table anymore. But just because probably they're going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be a boss move.
Yeah.
And it would absolutely destroy any mainstream normal Republican or whatever hope that there was going to be a real challenge to him, and it would expose the bankruptcy of the Republican Party, that they're all playing for second place to Trump, basically.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, but I'm actually more concerned at this point about the Democrat side of the ledger. Yeah. What do you think? I don't know. It's not looking good from where I'm sitting.
When Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks was kind of going on a campaign for several weeks or maybe even a month or so. Of course, he's heretofore not qualified because he's a foreign-born American citizen, basically, right? But he's challenging that. I think he's challenging on the 14th Amendment or something. He's saying that as a citizen, he should have all the rights of every other citizen. Otherwise, it's kind of discrimination or something. So, but he was kind of going on a campaign for weeks, and he was just complaining about how Joe Biden was going to lose, and Joe Biden's polling was terrible, and no presidential candidate ever came out back from this bad of a bad poll this time of year before the election and all this stuff. And I was kind of getting frustrated with it because, at the same time, I don't think that there's ever been a time where an incumbent president being challenged from within his own party seriously has gone on to win the thing. So it's like you're playing with the chances or the statistics the other way just by challenging him. And then when he announced his own presidential campaign, it kind of became a little clearer why he was trying to lay the groundwork for this. Now, at that time, polls go up and down. Joe Biden hasn't been great. Probably there's one or two things he could do to put himself in a good position, as far as real student debt forgiveness, nationwide marijuana legalization or decriminalization or something. I mean, there were things that he could do, I think, and that would have changed that a little bit. I think right now, though, since that time, I think his polls have just gone down worse and worse, and he's made just so many unforced errors and, unpopular decisions internationally, frankly. And I don't know, it's almost impossible to imagine what's going to happen next year, because Donald Trump, by all rights, should be in jail by that point. But at the same time, Joe Biden is, it's hard to see him get a majority of the American voters to vote for him.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it too late for him to drop out, though? I feel like it kind of is. I feel like if they were going to make this change, they should have done it a while ago.
Well, I mean, it's late for him, and it's not in his makeup to do it. It's not in his makeup to drop out. And frankly, he has really no one to blame but himself for this, because he was the one back in 2019 and 2020 when he was running the first time was talking about, oh, well, maybe I'll be a transitional leader, and maybe, maybe I'll just serve one term and then I'll let you have Kamala Harris or somebody else who can be the president, who can take the baton from me. So he already put it in voters' minds that he might only be a one-term president. So now to just be like, oh, what are you talking about? No, of course I'm going to run again, even though I'm, not an inspirational person in a lot of ways, have let people down on a lot of things right now. So,
Yeah.
but also I think a lot of the people who are talking about, oh, if you look at the polls, a generic Democrat beats the Republicans, but Joe Biden loses to all the Republicans. Yeah, that's true. A generic Democrat beats all the Republicans, but once you put a name and a face on that thing, then he doesn't beat them anymore. He or she doesn't beat them anymore, because people start picking them apart, and oppo research, and and they start taking positions, and it's just like a generic Democrat looks good, but once you actually settle on somebody, then that's when people start like picking them apart. So, I've always thought that was a disingenuous argument for replacing him too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And even if he did hand the baton off to Kamala at this point, I don't know that Kamala would win either. So I don't have much faith in that scenario.
Kamala's not inspiring great passion in the Democratic people at this point, I would say.
No.
So, yeah, I don't know what the solution is. I mean, yeah, it looks like it's going to be Biden or Trump, probably. Although it could be one of them against somebody else, or neither of them against anybody. I mean, there's health concerns as well here, I'd say.
I can't take the hypocrisy about people complaining about his mental acuity, which I agree, maybe there's some questions there, but I mean, Trump if you heard the guy talk, like, the thing is, he's always sounded kind of unhinged, so it's hard to tell what's like decline and what's just him,
Well, he looks a certain degree more panicked and frazzled in certain situations, and
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. They're both terrible options. No
Yeah.
matter who wins, we lose, as the Aliens versus Predator used to say.
But the good news is we've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to save us, right?
Yeah, that guy's an idiot. Yeah. I've seen several of his appearances and talks, and he is not a very smart guy, I would say.
Yeah. But just by that name recognition of the Kennedy thing, I think that could take him somewhat far. I feel like
it seemed like that he was going to start taking more votes from Republicans than Democrats, because I think part of the whole QAnon thing was that who was the guy, John F. Kennedy Jr., who had died in the plane crash in the 1990s. They all believed that he was not really dead, and that he was going to come back in Texas and like support Trump or something. And so somehow through QAnon, I think that the Kennedy name acquired a certain cachet on the Republican side. So, yeah, at that point, I think like Fox News and stuff stopped having him on or something, and he lost a lot of his coverage on the Republican side, just because they realized he was going to be hurting more than helping on their side.
Isn't there like some movement from the no labels people to draft Joe Manchin or Joe Lieberman or somebody? Isn't there some rumblings of that?
Yeah, I think I've heard stuff about what's his name, our recent senator from West Virginia.
Yeah, man.
I think there's some rumbling that he might do something, but ridiculous. It's the idea that there's any constituency for him out there is absurd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we've got Dean Phillips, representative from Minnesota, and Marianne Williamson back again. still in the mix.
Yeah, I think Dean Phillips is like he doesn't particularly disagree with Joe Biden on anything, does he? He just wants to present himself as kind of like, if you think Joe Biden can't do it, I'm just like Joe Biden, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Marianne Williamson, I've seen less of Marianne Williamson than before I before she declared. I feel like she was still going on lefty YouTube shows and stuff before she declared. I really haven't seen her for months. So yeah, there's no chance for most of those people.
Well, I don't know that there's really too much to say about the elections. I mean, even if Trump gets locked up, he can still run. So, I mean, he could run from jail. So I don't know that's going to stop him.
Yeah. Beyond the elections, I guess. I mean, have you been on Twitter lately?
A little bit, yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I'm on there. I will say I have more followers than I ever did before, but less engagement than ever as well.
Is it a lot of girls with the word cam in their profile link?
I don't know. I don't really look. I just like whenever every couple of days I get a new follower and I just like look at their profile one time, give it a cursory glance just to see who they are. They're never a real person basically. So as long as they don't start spamming crypto or webcam or something, I'm just like, okay, yeah, I'll take the follower. I suppose some people pay money for this. So the followers, not the webcam or the crypto.
Yeah. But what do you think overall of Twitter these days?
Oh, it's garbage. It's absolute garbage. It's but I think like some of the complaints people have are not. I don't know. I don't know. I'm curious to see like because like I think like people will say things like, oh, since the war between Israel and Palestine, misinformation about the war has really gone up on Twitter. And that's true. There's a lot of misinformation and stuff on there. But actually, there was a lot of misinformation during the beginning of the Ukraine conflict as well. Like I remember like there were, the ghost of Kiev and stuff like that. The Arma 3 military like sim video game footage that was passed off as real incidents in Ukraine. So a lot of the stuff that's actually happened in the more recent conflict was already going on during the Ukraine situation beginnings. But it didn't really seem to get noted back then. Now it's getting noted. So one thing that like I think is really a problem on the site that I never see get mentioned on TV or when people complain about it is that nowadays, whenever you click on a tweet that somebody has made or whatever, or an X or whatever they're calling them these days, the first 20 to 25 posts are always like totally unrelated, just clickbait, spam, ridiculous crap. Because, and it's all because Elon Musk has made it so that people can get money. They pay for their membership. They pay their $8 a month or whatever. This motherfucker paid for Twitter, meme, insert here. But he like sweetened the deal for them by saying, hey, look, if you get certain number of engagements with your content that you post, then Twitter will pay you back for doing that. And so these people are engagement farming by posting, just like ridiculously sexual stuff, ridiculously violent stuff, animal cruelty shit, just, insane like conspiracy theories, just stuff that's designed to get people to click on it or like it or comment on it or get into, And so the effect is that like whenever like something gets posted on Twitter and you're trying to like see what the discussion is about that subject or if there's any fact check or if it's correct or incorrect or, whatever the context of that tweet may have been, you've got to wade through just, so many instances of unrelated crap to get to it that everybody's commenting like, oh, I'm so sick of this. I really don't like this. But when I see like Kara Swisher or something talking about the problems of Twitter, I never hear her mentioning this. So it's kind of like, it doesn't seem to be something that the tech Illuminati or whatever are cognizant of or find worth mentioning.
Yeah, and even on an more innocuous thing, I feel like the amount of accounts that are just like, who remembers this from your childhood accounts are like off the charts now because like you said, the incentive is engagement at all costs. And, some people have chosen the outrage and, posting wild stuff. And the other people have gone very Facebook boomer with it. Who remembers the rotary telephone where they like hold up a they'll put up a picture of like an onion and be like, what is this? And like, it's like a debate for people that are like, oh, it's an onion, don't you know?
There's a picture of a public telephone in the street, and they're like, I'm this many years old.
Exactly. Yeah, but I was always very highly suspect of that when they first started paying people, because I think they kind of strategically, this is just my conspiracy theory, but it's probably true, that they just picked a certain handful of people to pay a lot initially to get, like, juice the excitement for it initially, because I remember when those first checks were being handed out, it's like, whoa, Cat Turd got 2.6 million or whatever, wow. And then like the next month's check is like $13 or whatever. It's like they really like juiced that first one to like get people all excited, and it was just a few people that were going to post about, oh my gosh, thank you, Elon, wow.
He's further damaged the site basically, because it used to be that a blue check mark was not a guarantee of legitimacy, but it was a reasonably decent indicator that somebody had some legitimacy or some public profile, and that they were who they said they were. At this point, a blue check mark just means you're basically an Elon simp who is willing to pay money for this, and you are probably a libertarian, Trump supporting, like that's basically what the blue check mark has basically come to indicate at this point.
Yeah.
So it's, you've damaged the value of the one potentially monetizable thing you had about the website, but obviously by monetizing it, you completely delegitimized what it actually was. So bravo. So what are you doing for socials these days, Bob?
I'm mostly on Mastodon and Post. I have a Blue Sky invite code sitting there, and I haven't done anything with it yet. I've actually written 2 stories about Threads so far, but I still haven't signed up.
I got on Threads. I was one of the first 500,000 people to join Threads.
Yeah, how is it?
And it seemed like it was going to be okay for a couple of days, and then everybody that was already friends with me on Instagram was suddenly my friend on Threads too, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not posting political shit, so this is really not this is actually not a Twitter replacement at this point, So exactly. So I really don't go on there anymore, because it's just it's all the same people from Instagram. And also on Instagram, everybody changes their name and everything and has different handles. So like, I don't know how many people follow me on Instagram, and I have no idea who most of them are, because they don't use their real name anymore. So, and they haven't for years. So it's like, I've got this zombie following of people posting like, white trash philosophy memes and stuff all the time. Just like, the real ones know, and the real ones are you. Just kind of dumb shit like this, that's faux deep, ruminations on life and what it all means or something.
Exactly.
It's I don't know.
It's like Heath Ledger's Joker smoking. I figured there was this one meme that had like a collection. It was like when you see one of these images, you're about to hear how loyal this person is or whatever, and it's like 5 different, like, the Joker, Heath Ledger's Joker smoking, Denzel Washington, in a black and white picture, it's like all these like attributed quotes to people that didn't say it, but it's like, I'm so loyal and deep, I'm built different or whatever.
It's insane. Yeah, it's just like, I want to know what these people are thinking, and I suspect not very much, but
right.
I don't know. I think they, I think they think they're being deep or something, but it's very obvious that they're not. So it's just like,
The thing about Instagram is like it's a visual first thing, and like the people I follow on Instagram, like I follow skydivers and like people that do intricate woodworking and things that translate to,
the visual medium,
and I don't really want to know what those people had for breakfast. I don't want to follow those people on a Twitter-like service.
Yeah, that's Instagram is the last place you go for political stuff for most people, I would say, right? Like, so why would I want all those people who are inherently unpolitical? I mean, okay, yeah, they didn't really want politics on, but the thing was, like, I mean, he dropped Threads on the same week that something big had happened with Elon Musk and Twitter. Like Twitter had done something very unpopular at that moment, and that was right when he dropped Threads. And so, Elon was really angry and wanted to fight him and everything, and he said, and it seemed like it was a great idea. Okay, yeah, we're going to cannibalize Twitter's user base and stuff at this very moment. And then within 2 weeks or so, they were already betraying the fact that, we don't really want to be Twitter. We don't want to, be a politics place or a news place. We want to be a.
Exactly. Like without the politics and news, that's pretty much the only things. I guess sometimes funny memes, I guess, and tweets. But other than that, that's pretty much what I use Twitter for. So.
Yeah. I do think, like, as much as I hate to admit it, I think there's something kind of irreplaceable about Twitter. There is there's a wittiness and a sharpness and an acerbic-ness on Twitter that, like, on post, I just feel like there's just so many boomer memes and everything, and just a bunch of 55-year-old resistance liberals who love Kamala Harris and everything, and Pete Buttigieg and stuff, and there's just not a lot of wit. They're like, repost now if you think Trump is going to be in jail next year. It's like, no, that's probably not going to happen. And yeah, we all agree, but I see your engagement farming. I respect the hustle, but you're a boomer. It's not going to happen for you. I mean, I guess that'd be a Gen X at that point. It's too late.
Exactly. Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, no, I definitely still scroll Twitter. I don't really post on Twitter all that much anymore, except for work occasionally. But yeah, it's mostly the only place I still scroll, because you're right, there is something about the feed of Twitter that I haven't been able to find anywhere else. Yeah, it has never been replaced thus far. So, but yeah, it's I don't know, maybe that culture takes some time to build up. Maybe it's a unique natural occurrence in that place that won't be replicated other places, no matter how long we wait. But I don't know, it's like on post, I think people are not very used to getting pushback on anything, because it is kind of an echo chamber to some degree. Mm-hmm.
Actually, in the last 24 hours, I've been in fights with a couple of people on post. One of them ended reasonably amicably, and we had a frank discussion of facts, and we basically came to respect each other or whatever. The other one, this person this is I don't know. Yeah, it's that third rail, I suppose, the Israel-Palestine conflict and stuff. But
all right, well, let's get into it. This is the big one. Now, what did you before we get any further? What did you think of my uninformed assessment that I sent you? That's kind of my jumbled thoughts before we get into it.
I think you're on the right track, and I think I think you seem to have a lack of certainty about something when. I don't think everybody has to be an expert on this to have an opinion. I think some background information is necessary, but at a certain point, if you require that the majority of the population have a PhD in Holocaust history or genocide studies to recognize when it happens, society is just never going to recognize a genocide when it's happening again.
Yeah.
If we expect that level of expertise to comment on something, then how can we ever have expected the uneducated German population in the 1940s to have spoken up against what they were saying? I mean, it's so, and I mean, did you want to, the fight that I was having was that this one woman who seemed like a kind of like a resistant liberal boomer type whose engagement farmed up to 5,000 followers or so. She made a post, yesterday, saying that, oh my God, Nelson Mandela would be so disappointed if he could see what South African disgraceful president is doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't think he would. And I simply posted the quote that he said in 1997 that said, basically South Africans will never be free as long as Palestinians are not free.
Mm-hmm.
So I posted, there was no other likes, no other comments on her post at that point, although she has 5,000 followers.
Mm-hmm.
So what she did then was she immediately changed the original quote to say, people shouldn't be, people like, this basically South Africa isn't the same country it was under Nelson Mandela. It's very different now. And people shouldn't, actually, there's a lot of corruption with the current president, even though this lady has never posted about South Africa before. The only reason she's posting is because she's obviously angry about what they're saying about Israel right now.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I was just like, I called her out. I was like, oh my God, I actually took a screenshot of what you had posted before you changed it, but now you've changed what I was responding to. So it looks like I'm responding to something that I wasn't and saying something really weird. And there was some back and forth and at some point I said she seemed kind of like a Republican, one of these Republican MAGA types who, likes to co-opt, for example, what's his name? Martin Luther King Jr. and say, oh, if Martin Luther King Jr. was alive today, he'd be a Republican. He'd hate the woke mafia and all that. You seem like one of these people who just wants to kind of co-opt a universally beloved figure for your own purposes when you don't actually know what the person actually believed and what they said about the issue in their lifetime. And she was like, oh, well, Nelson Mandela, it was a different time, and he didn't know that the Palestinian people are enslaved to Hamas, not to Israel, and he wouldn't like it, and it was just like. And then by the third or fourth reply, she was just screaming at me and telling me, "Who the hell are you to make me answer to you? You're not my master," and da 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 da, all this crazy shit. And I was just like, "Oh man, you seem mad. Oh, yeah, methinks you don't protest too much," and all. I was just kind of trolling at that point, which is something that I think we need to bring over from Twitter. These boomers need to be trolled. And that's.
So, they need to hear the booze more often.
We need to have better ideas, but
we got to bring that thing from when Cameron went on Bill O'Reilly. You mad? You mad?
yeah. That's kind of where I was at, because her reaction was so ridiculous. She posted a wrong quote, or she posted something falsely claiming what Nelson Mandela probably would have believed today. I provided direct evidence that that's not what he thought at the time and probably wouldn't be what he thought today. He changed it and replied to me in a way that made it seem like I was still wrong. And then when I called her out for changing it, she went apeshit.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, is that an argument for not being able to edit posts, though? Because in the first 3 hours on posts, you can edit. And I think on Twitter, to do that, you have to be able to, you have to be signed up for the blue check thing we were talking about. So it is a bit of a difference between the operation of the two sites. So you're saying that when she changed her original post, your then comment, which is on a separate system, by the way, I think from Still Post, got to work on that. No, I still need that to be separate. That's one of the things too about Twitter is though, like sometimes I want to I've had to literally copy and paste comments from my posts just to get people to comment, you know what I mean, on it and make it a proper post. Whereas when Twitter, you could just hit that, retweet button and then it's thrown into the mix just like everything else. And that's kind of what keeps things going,
I will say this, I've long been frustrated because, for example, you make a nice long, reasonably long, however long a tweet could be. You make a long tweet on Twitter and you start getting some likes or comments on it, and then you notice a big typo in it. And you're like, I really want to fix that one typo, but I can't do that except to copy and paste everything and make a new tweet with the edit. But by that point, the likes and comments are gone, so the engagement has disappeared. So I do think there has to be it's nice to have that, but at the same time, if people are going to post something absurd or stupid and then people comment on it and then they change it and everybody's like, I don't know why everybody's jumping down their throat. What they said seems perfectly reasonable. If you're going to there's no way to, I don't know, maybe AI or something, but there's no way to determine when somebody's editing just for typos or clarity versus when someone is meaningfully changing the character of what they actually had originally said in a way that affects the future responses.
Yeah.
It's maddening.
Well, I know on Facebook, I think you can see the previous versions of the post before it was edited, possibly. So maybe that's a solution. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. That is the one problem, I guess, with editing posts. I always do on Twitter, I was always like, oh, why, one typo, come on, just let me fix this one thing. I can't even, I got to delete this entire thing,
I mean, maybe there should be like a limit, like a character limit. Like you can edit up to 25 characters or something.
Right.
Like that covers most small typos that you're going to make, but it doesn't really allow you to meaningfully change the tone of your original post, I guess.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you don't like your post, you don't like the response you're getting, you can always delete it, I suppose. Although, people screenshot things and stuff.
Mm-hmm. So. Exactly. But, yeah. Anyway, back to Israel-Palestine.
The Israel-Palestine thing, like, I would say my personal history with it, quite frankly, well, it depends on how far back you want to go, I suppose. In the people who are supporting Palestinian liberation in whichever form that takes, I think quite frankly, a lot of American Jews and diaspora Jews are frankly great allies in that respect. And I think that there are liberal parties and Haaretz newspaper and left-wing publications and to some degree left-wing politicians to some degree in Israel who are able to say things about the situation on the ground over there that nobody in America is able to say. Mm-hmm. So I never put up with any suggestion that being pro-Palestinian freedom or nationhood, nationalism or something is anti-Semitic. And I do think that you have to draw a line between Zionism and being Jewish. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I recognize, in 1945, Europe did not look like a very friendly place for a lot of Jews to stay. There was really no way for them to stay. Their land had been expropriated by the local populations. There was the constant threat of continued pogroms. There was more or less for a lot of Jewish people in Europe, there was no right of return, to turn a phrase. So now what happened 3 years later in 1948 with the formation of Israel and, the massacres that happened there and things like that, that doesn't really excuse it. But I understand for people coming out of the Holocaust, how important this could have been at that time. Mm-hmm. And even today, I would not say that Israel should not exist. I think Israel, there's no way to remove Israel that doesn't look like a genocide again. There are living people who lost their land that are still alive out there, but they're not coming back to their land. The land in the form it was in doesn't exist anymore. Now, whether there could be reparations or something like a financial compensation or something like that, and in a negotiation about a Palestinian state or something, I think that could be an issue. That could be something that could be agreed upon probably, and would probably go quite a ways to assuaging some of these resentments to some degree. Although at this point, we've probably got another couple generations of resentments based on what's happened in the past 3 months. So.
Yeah. Like I was telling you, I mean, I don't see that there's a way that Israel doesn't exist at this point. So I feel like a two-state solution is the only one that makes sense. I can't see any other option. It's not a great option, obviously, but it's the only one that I see happening. But if anyone wants one or the other, I think that's unrealistic.
I mean, the other option is a one-state solution where, Muslims, Jews, and Christians all live equally in one country. But, I don't think the Israelis would go for that. And I'm sure a lot of them would find it offensive to even suggest. But
yeah.
But the situation now, I think the reason why people call it an apartheid situation, which of course they say is kind of like a blood libel or something, and yada yada yada. But you have a couple million Palestinians living in territory without a state, controlled by the state of Israel. Like to some degree, my own history with Judaism, I suppose, is actually, you may not know, but before when I was homeschooled, before I went to public school and everything, my family had some Jewish friends, and the father in the family actually taught traditional Jewish music and dance to a bunch of kids at a synagogue in North Carolina where I lived. And so I would go to the synagogue with his two sons, with my brother and stuff, and we were part of the dance troupe and everything. we weren't Jewish or anything, but we were like, we had been to the synagogue. We'd participated in this cultural activity to some degree for a couple of years or whatever. And I don't know, I think he was kind of like an expert on the subject and, researching these lost traditions and stuff that had been, almost wiped off the map and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and throughout my schooling in middle school, I remember specifically in 7th grade, we had a teacher who, basically told us that Israel was right and the other side was wrong, and that was that. And so, my thinking didn't really stray too much from that perspective. I mean, I grew up listening to NPR my whole life from a kid in the car, just listening to the radio. NPR was always on. And, so for as long as I can remember the news, the Israel-Palestine conflict, probably starting from around the time of the First Intifada in the late 1980s, has, been in my ear. And until I, got to university and started doing my own research and started seeing comparable situations. And around that time was during the Second Intifada, which was much, much bloodier with suicide bombings and things like that. But, my understanding of the situation changed quite a bit. And, in university, being a history major, I was studying a lot of colonial and post-colonial societies and stuff. And I, could see things that, were in the scholarship in a parallel way, kind of. I never had a class in college about the Israel-Palestine conflict or the history of that. But, I was, doing research, going to libraries, reading other stuff, watching the news, as well as, like, I also had studied, for example, the Yugoslav wars in the 1990s outside of the classroom as well. So I was kind of like, I was studying some things in a kind of unofficial way. Not, I was doing my own research,
You gotta watch out for that phrase.
Yeah. No, I don't mean it to sound like, like I was like, huffing whippets and like, watching Alex Jones or anything. It was nothing that extreme, of course, but, getting a better understanding than the one perhaps my 7th grade social studies teacher, who was a Christian fundamentalist in Western North Carolina, would have given me. So
exactly. But
and since then, we've just seen the situation, with periodic wars, periodic mowings of the grass, as the Israelis call it, where they cut down a whole new generation of young Palestinians in a war. And, and sometimes they start the war, and sometimes, the Palestinians have done something that causes it to kick off. I think with advents like the Iron Dome, and with America persistently protecting them at the UN Security Council, I think that, unfortunately, the Israelis have come to the conclusion that the status quo was sustainable and optimal in a way. That this, occasional attacks and then a over response was always going to be there to their advantage. And I've always been thinking, well, no, eventually somebody gets nuclear weapons, eventually chemical weapons may be introduced. The Palestinians are running around with AKs today. If they'd had these kind of weapons during the Nakba, the situation in the 40s when they were kicked out of their land, just with the fact that they have these more advanced weapons today, it would have gone a different way probably. Mm-hmm. But so the thing is, as weapon development continues and, things like that, eventually there's going to be something that happens that the Iron Dome is going to stop. And we've seen what that was now in this instance.
Right.
So I think a lot of people right after 10/7, which was the wrong time to do it, they were trying to blame Israel. And I think that that's a really, tone deaf way to do this. But I think the point that some of them, not all of them, some of them may have just been anti-Semitic. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing is, the broader point was that, yes, Hamas was the proximate cause of the just, the abysmal, abominable atrocities that happened on that day. Mm-hmm. But the long-term cause was the acceptance of this status quo that is unacceptable. It would be unacceptable to any people in the world, not just, Muslim Arabs. So.
Mm-hmm. Right. But and another thing I think that's worth noting is the conflation of Hamas and Palestine and the Palestinian people. And I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, this is entirely predictable. and it's not surprising, and it goes to the genocidal aspect of this whole campaign, frankly. You know, this idea that the Palestinians voted one time in, what was it, 2006, and they never had another election. And, you know, more than 50% of the Palestinians are under 20 years old or something. So they weren't alive in a voting age when this happened, that they're all complicit or liable for their ruler, the leaders of their country. And at the same time, the Israelis, who ostensibly have a functioning democracy, can't seem to get rid of this fucking criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu. And frankly, within a day or two, when they realized the incompetence, when it came out that Egypt had given a warning to the Israelis weeks before or something, this was going to happen, and they didn't act. I mean, this is like George W. Bush levels of, you know, Bin Laden determined to strike within the United States. And he's like, okay, you covered your ass. Okay, get out of here. You know, I got some settlers to protect and back up over in the West Bank, where we don't really have a problem. You know, this is just like, you know, this is another instance of right-wing incompetence, where right-wing authoritarian leadership, militant, you know, pro-military solution kind of leadership is incompetent and leads to a tragedy on their own soil. And then they stay in power and they keep fucking up. The Israelis should have thrown Benjamin Netanyahu out within a week or two of this thing, and vote of no confidence. I don't know what they would have had to do, but I think I've heard recently that Israel is suggesting that this campaign may have to last a year. Well, Benjamin Netanyahu has said he'll step down once the war is over. He has an incredible incentive never to let this war end as long as he can, because the second he does, theoretically, he's going to be removed from power, because theoretically he's not popular in Israel. And theoretically he's going to be prosecuted and convicted for some other corruption-related issues that he had going on before this situation. To the degree that we can hold the Palestinian people in Gaza responsible for Hamas, we actually have more of a duty to hold the Israelis responsible for not having gotten rid of Netanyahu, because God knows we had 4 years of Donald Trump who we couldn't get rid of. So I get it. It's ridiculous. So
yeah, I mean, to go back to the election too, I think Netanyahu has every reason to want Trump to win, right? I mean, he has that special relationship with Jared Kushner, and, you know, we all know the history there, and I don't think he's invested in Joe Biden's reelection. I think he's invested in quite the opposite.
No, yeah, absolutely. The Likud Party has long made their preference known, and Benjamin Netanyahu particularly have made their preference for Republicans known. I think during the tail end of Obama's administration, Netanyahu came to America and he didn't meet with Obama, but he went directly to the House or the Senate, and he gave a speech to the Republicans. The Democrats were not invited, basically. So since the Obama administration, Netanyahu's made his preferences clear. And, you know, I've seen posts on Twitter like, you know, actually Joe Biden said he's going to be not a war president, but actually Donald Trump didn't start any new wars, and look at what Joe Biden's doing. Well, Donald Trump moved the American embassy to the split city of Jerusalem. And he officially recognized something that America has been careful not to recognize for like 50 years, which is to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. These were controversial things that pissed off a lot of Palestinians. And then also there were the Abraham Accords, where they were trying to make peace between like Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and I want to say one other country, and Israel, without concern for the Palestinians, you know. And later they were trying to get Saudi Arabia to sign up. So these actions, which were threatening to, you know, cut the Palestinians out of the negotiation of the issue surrounding Israel, this is probably what led to this to some degree, the October 7th attack. And so to say that Donald Trump was not responsible for any wars, like Donald Trump, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire with the Russia-Ukraine stuff. Donald Trump gets impeached at one point for withholding military aid to Ukraine. And then shortly after Donald Trump is no longer president, there's a war with Ukraine and Russia that drags us in to some degree. And Israel-Palestine explodes a couple years later. And it has to do, I think, with the negotiations that he and Jared Kushner were trying to do that were cutting out the Palestinians from the peace negotiations. So,
Right.
yeah, so to say that, like, it's very simple, but, it's hard for, most Americans probably don't have that context. It's like, oh, yeah, between 2016 and 2020, America did not start a new war in a new country. That is true. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So,
Well, I mean, most of these problems don't run in 4 and 8 year increments. These are
cycles,
long running, decades long issues. And if you change the equation, it might take a little while for the fruits of that change to come to bear, so.
Yeah. And it's, yeah. And I think one thing we've observed for many years is that, like, extremists in one country seek out the extremists in the other country, and moderates in one country seek out the moderates in the other country. Would it have been better, for this to have happened? Would it have been better if this happened when Trump was president? Yes, probably. That would have drawn a more, although we probably would have put troops on the ground. But the thing is, like, as far as, like, or like the economy crashes, like, right as George W. Bush is leaving power, it's like, oh, it's Obama's economy, and these things a lot of times they happen right after what the person did. Or there's a lagging, there's a lag of the consequences that kind of obfuscates the cause and effect for a lot of people. So it's very frustrating. But yeah, with the genocidal, I think there's been a lot of genocidal language from the Israelis, from the leadership included, and the ambassadors that they have, as well as the individual citizens on TikTok and places like that. There's a lot of cry bully behavior. And, it's easy for the average person to kind of dismiss that. But, oh, well, they're just talking. But before the Holocaust happened, the language, the changes in the German language, the changes in the things that people were saying in public and stuff, like, this is all stuff that was very important. I think, like, if you look at, Holocaust scholarship, you'll find that the language is very important to indicate what was going to happen physically shortly afterwards. And so anybody who's ignoring the language is missing the forest for the trees, I think. I think that there are Jewish voices that are, carrying more weight than they should have to. But, thank goodness for them, because, of course, if you speak out about this, you're an anti-Semite if you're not a Jew, or you're a self-hating Jew if you happen to be a Jew. So they've got you covered on both sides there. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report has been really good, I think. I've had some frustration. Katie Halper has been pretty good on this issue, although I strongly disagreed with her argumentation style regarding Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah, that's another one we haven't talked about yet. It's really upsetting to see the Republicans starting to turn their backs on, well, not starting, I guess, just even more so turning their backs on Ukraine at this point.
Yeah. Well, when this thing kicked off and was not resolved within a week or two, I had the sense that the appetite for continued support in Ukraine was probably going to evaporate pretty quickly, and I think that's happened. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But at the same time, people like what's his name? The guy used to be on MSNBC, used to be in the Navy. Oh God, what's his name? I'm terrible with names. This is why I'm not ready for my TV debut, I think.
So a person on TV that used to be in the Navy, you said?
I think he was in, like, Navy intelligence or something.
Malcolm Nance?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought he was great on the Ukraine stuff for a year. And, talking about, massacring civilians with indiscriminate bombing in Mariupol and Kyiv and all these places. And then to see him turn on a dime and be like, he never has a kind word for the Palestinians. And he's like, this is the same fight. And it's like, well, from a real kind of geopolitical stance, yes, Hamas or whatever, Iran are kind of in the Russian sphere of influence. But from a what's going on and what's actually happening and people being kicked off their own land, um, I think morally it's kind of going in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
Not that the October 7th attack was not horrific in its own way, and depraved, and just a lot of disgusting stuff happened on that day and the days after that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure for a lot of the but I think it's pretty clear that Israel really doesn't have a priority on getting back hostages. It doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, they shot down 3 of their own hostages who were waving white flags, had escaped their captors somehow. We may never know how they escaped their captors, because probably everybody who was in those rooms is dead at this point. And they were speaking Hebrew without wearing shirts, so they couldn't be mistaken as having a bomb vest on. And they were waving white flags, and 2 of them were shot outright, and one of them ran back in the building that he was in and was killed immediately afterwards. And it's like, and that tells you that if that's the chance that Israeli hostages have on the ground in Gaza today, you can't imagine that many Palestinians have a much better chance when they encounter the IDF forces in their area. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. Anyways, so it's been political allies make strange bedfellows, because on one issue you're against each other, and on another issue you find that you have to break bread with them to some degree because they're speaking truth on some issue. So it's very frustrating sometimes.
It's very strange. Yeah, there was a Pentagon Inspector General report saying that over $1 billion of U.S. military aid to Ukraine not properly tracked. Anyway, I'll have to read more about that before I comment on it. But yeah, I just think it's really upsetting to hear so many Republicans just take the Russian talking points and running with them on this. And as you said, there's definitely a connection with what Trump got impeached over and this. It's all of a piece. So of the perfect phone call.
I did everything right, and they indicted me.
Great quote.
Yeah. What a narcissistic martyr. I think, to come back to the Israel-Palestine thing, I think that anybody, no matter what you believe about it, I think there are a lot of people in the world who are, I think, correctly calling this the beginnings of a genocide.
Mm-hmm.
There's talk that the Israeli government has been in talks with the government of Congo about deporting or voluntarily migrating the Gazan population to Congo. Now, do you know what this sounds like to me?
I have a feeling I know what you're gonna say.
Okay, I'll I mean, in the World War II context, what do you think this looks like?
Didn't Germany have a plan similar to this?
The Madagascar plan, yes.
Yeah, there you go.
They wanted to deport European Jewry to the island nation of Madagascar off the east coast of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
They studied this plan. I think it originally came up in 1937, and by 1942 or 43, it was all but abandoned, and they were on to the final solution at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of deporting an undesirable subhuman population out of the desired land, that's pretty on the nose, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I think that the Gaza situation has reminded me a lot of is the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, and then the subsequent liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Down to the fact that I think the Jewish section of Warsaw City, the capital of Poland before that, was even subdivided. The Jews had to cross checkpoints to get from one section of the Jewish area to another. So, with the checkpoints in the West Bank and things like that, I think that there is, and the idea, I think the Nazis had the idea that if after they had deported all the Jews, they were going to raise all the buildings, steal all the valuables, and then create a park for their people there. And I think you can hear a lot of Israelis talking about similar things with Gaza. knock down all the buildings, and then you'll have beachfront property and stuff and this kind of
Uh-huh.
stuff. They've been joking about that. Um, I think those are a couple, I think if you go on YouTube and you watch a 20, 25-minute documentary about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, for example, I think a person would be shocked by what they might find, the parallels there. And I think by the time that the writing was more or less on the wall, and when there was an uprising, and it was a pitiful uprising, and to be fair, to my knowledge, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising did not target German civilians or anything like that. But, there was a military provocation that was immediately followed by overwhelming, crushing, mechanized, modern military destroying a civilian population that was largely captive. I think there are incredible parallels there. So, and I'm sure some people are not going to want to hear that. They don't want to, any compare, to some people, the Holocaust exists separately outside of history, and any comparisons to it, if the first person to bring up Hitler loses the argument, as the saying goes. And yet, we have this saying, never again. Well, if the Holocaust was a unique situation that could never possibly be replicated anywhere else in the world, then why even bother saying never again? Because definitionally it'll never happen again. So, but the things like that, there are things that were, I don't know, just this idea of the total displacement of the people. And at the same time, they go to great pains to say that, we're at war with Hamas, not with the Palestinian people. But then they're, also every Gazan is a Hamas supporter, and they made their choice. And yet at the same time, if you look at the uptick in violence and murders and property theft and just general settler and military terrorism taking place in the West Bank, it's very clear that this is a racial and religious war. This is not a war against Hamas. So.
Yeah, it's really shocking to see some of the things going on, and in this Congo plan, don't people live in Congo too? Like,
yeah,
aren't we just recreating the problem somewhere else?
Yeah, well, I can't imagine why. I can't imagine why the people of Congo, or the government of Congo, would want to have, some 2 million or however many million, Palestinian people, Muslim people come into their country when they have no claim to the territory, no history in the territory, and in fact, a history of violent resistance to governments that don't represent them. Perhaps there's a financial incentive in it. I can't imagine what the other incentive would be, or maybe military aid or something. But but the fact that this is even in the offing is absurd, and puts the lie to the idea that this is not genocide. Again, genocide doesn't mean that you have to kill every single member of a targeted population. Moving a population involuntarily to an area that they have no connection to, that's an aspect of genocide. So, yeah. There was one other thing I was going to and also, I think we as Americans often think that if I'd been alive during the Holocaust, I would have done things differently. Or if I had been a European settler in America, I would not have dispossessed the Native Americans of their land. But, the Native American tribes probably looked a lot like Palestinians back then. I mean, there were some vicious groups. They were, chopping people's scalps off and pulling the scalps off of living people, men, women, and children. They were taking prisoners, kidnapping children after killing entire settlements and areas, having the children live the rest of their lives in the native tribes in some cases if they didn't kill them. Women were kidnapped in some cases. To a European Palestinian or to a European settler in Americas at that time, these people were probably looking like, frightening barbarians. And this isn't like this happened in 1 year. This is happening over several hundred years. So there's several hundred years of kind of loss of context that, this whole land should be their land. well, if European settlers have been on the East Coast for 150 years and you're just kind of pushing westward, it's like you don't really think about the East Coast as having ever been Native American land. Really, it's your land, and and look at where the look at what happened to the Native Americans. And in many cases, the survivors of what happened wind up on undesirable land that was not their land originally. Oftentimes, it in a different character to the land that they came from, not fertile, not rich in natural resources. Although I haven't seen the movie The Killers of the Flower Moon or whatever, which is what happened, I suppose, when they discovered actually that the Native Americans had been put on land that was rich in natural resources. So, so again, I think I think anybody who has no qualms about what's happening in Israel and Palestine right now, I think anybody who said that they would have had a different take on the Native Americans, or they would have been one of the good Germans or whatever during the Nazi period, I think they need to have another think, because there are historical parallels here that are very, very ripe. So anyways, I think I would just kind of close off on that.
Right. Well, Chad, we can't go without talking. What music have you been listening to lately?
Oh God. Let's see. I listen to music when I go to the gym, which is rare.
Oh, yeah? So you don't listen to music that much?
I recently rediscovered a song by Genuine, which I'd kind of like forgotten because it's kind of like later Genuine. Oh God, what's it called? Hang on.
Isn't Pony,
one second.
is it?
Huh?
Not Pony, right?
No, that's vintage Genuine, which is also a great song too. And I think Magic Mike, the movie from about a decade ago, really brought that song back in a big way. And Magic Mike 2, even, because that was always kind of Magic Mike, the male stripper's song, was The Pony by Genuine. Then in like the second movie at the beginning, he's done with stripping. He's doing his own thing. He's making his furniture. But then one night he's tired, he's late. He met up with his old friends and, kind of felt above them a little bit. But that night he's down in his basement working on his bullshit furniture that he's trying to make. And what comes on the radio but Pony? And he starts, making love to his skill saw and flipping down his helmet and everything. It's absurd, but okay. I think the song is called Differences by Genuine. That's a good one that I've kind of rediscovered recently. Sometimes I get into these things where I'm at the gym and I just kind of start going down the YouTube algorithm and I wind up with a bunch of kind of royalty free kind of like music that's actually produced for free on YouTube or whatever. And some of it is surprisingly good. It's like it legitimately could be a hit on the song on the radio or something, I think. But let's see.
Just like when they have the compilation of like Ultimate Study music 4-hour compilation or whatever.
Yeah, I think Burn Water is one group. I think Ikigai, a Japanese word by the band Burn Water. I don't know Burn Water. That's a pretty good song. Yeah, so like some of those songs, I guess, and like I said, the Genuine Differences, and just a variety of things. What was it? Inya's song. Do you remember Wyclef Jean's band, Refugees, the Fugees?
Sure.
What was the big one was it Lauryn Hill was the singer, I think, on that? Was their
well, they had Ready or Not.
I think that the background song of that, which I never knew, even going back to middle school and high school or whatever, when I was aware of that song, I never knew they were sampling an Inya song about I want to say I forget which century it was, but an ancient
Boa Dicea is the song.
Boudica. Yeah,
Boudica.
I believe that's her name. Yeah.
Well, that's the name of the song by Enya that they sampled.
Yeah, it's an outstanding song. And it's a story about a local queen of a local group of whoever was on the British Isles at that time. I think in the mid-eastern part of the island there, the main island, who she had she was, to some degree, she was resisting the Romans or something when the Romans were colonizing the place. And at some point, I think like she was raped or her daughters were raped or something by the local Romans and stuff. And she raised an army and went on an absolute rampage. And I think she pretty much sacked London, or whatever London was called at that time, including several other places, and just killed thousands of people before she finally lost a battle and committed suicide, I think, so that she wouldn't be taken prisoner or anything. But like, so, and to this day, I think she's got statues in London and stuff.
Oh, wow.
So, but the vocal aspect in the song of that is quite powerful. So
cool. I'll
incredible.
look that one up. Yeah. I didn't know that was sampled from something, and I didn't know it was Enya. I only know Orinoco Flow from her.
It's a good song too. Catchy, little dated maybe.
Sure.
But yeah. Anyways, those are probably three of the songs that I've been listening to somewhat these days.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I feel like that song has, like, Enya has kind of had a resurgence over the years. I feel like people used to make fun of Enya or something. I feel like people have started to come around.
Yeah, Enya and Sade. There was a certain very sexy, mellow vibe from some British music back in the 80s and 90s. I agree.
Definitely. Well, hey, thanks for coming back on the podcast, Cha. We should do more of these, just kind of state of the world ones. I know we've always got more to say, and we don't have to wait for the next event or whatever to get it going. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm down whenever we can get some time to do it. Yeah, and there's enough going on. I mean, any week of the year there should be enough going on if we pay attention. So, but yeah, obviously there's a lot of major stuff going on right now. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, have a good night, rest of your night, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Yeah. Thanks again, Bob. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later.